Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. We would like to move on to part 2 of the Gsdr session. The session is entitled Present State and Future Development of SDGs Action Toward Change based on global trend, including Gsdr 2023 interim report. What will be the key for change? In this session, speakers from economic organizations and civil society organizations will introduce their efforts to achieve the SDGs and discuss the key points for transformation. The session is available in Japanese and English. Please select the language of your choice from the special website. The English materials are attached to the distribution screen and can be downloaded. First, let me introduce the speakers. From Keidanren, the Japan Business Federation, Ms. Tomoko Hasegawa, the Managing Director of Keidanren. From the Global Compact Network Japan Representative Director, Mr. Toshio Arima. The Fellow Director of the Sumitomo Mitsui Trust Bank, Managing Organization of the Principles for Financial Action for the 21st Century, Mr. Tsukasa Kanai. The Co-Representative Director of the Japan Civil Society Network on SDGs, Ms. Atsuko Miwa. Dr. Jaime Miranda, one of the 15 independent scientists appointed by the UN Secretary General for the Gsdr, will also be speaking as a commentator. Let me introduce Dr. Miranda. He is a research professor at the School of Medicine, director of the Chronica Center of Excellence in Chronic Disease at the Cangedano Heredia University. With 300 peer-reviewed publications, his work brings together epidemiological and health policy aspects of chronic, non-communicable diseases in low- and middle-income countries. Dr. Miranda has served as a counselor for Latin America and Caribbean of the International Epidemiological Association, co-chair of the Joint Technical Steering Committee of the Global Alliance for Chronic Diseases, and working group member of the WHO Global Coordination Mechanism on the Prevention and Control of Non-Communicable Diseases. Thank you, Professor. Thank you. From here, I would like to ask Mr. Norichika Kanie, who is the chairman of the Japan SDGs Action Promotion Council, to take it from here. So first, I would like to say hi to Jaime.
Thank you for your participation, Jaime. I understand that I haven't finished your homework to me yet, but besides that, I will do my best in convening this session, and thank you for your participation.
So let us start the session. As introduced, my name is Kanie. I would like to ask for your cooperation. Mainly in this session, we will focus on 2 points. In the previous session, we had a discussion about the Gsdr 2023. For individual issues or challenges, the keys or the leverage points are becoming a little bit clear, like human rights or climate change or pandemic measures or biodiversity. So in different fields, there are different keys and leverage points. And if you push them correctly, transformations happen. I think that part is becoming clear. From a SDGs perspective, overall, where are the links? What are the trade-offs and synergies between them? That point is not clear yet. And in the Gsdr 2023, that is something that we would like to convey so that we can stimulate actions. So we talked about that earlier. In order to make that happen, what are the points? What are the leverage points for transformation, and what kind of impacts would they have? So individually, they are at the forefront in their activities. The stakeholders will be sharing their thoughts, and we'll talk about how we can spread those type of perspectives and activities. That's point number one. Secondly, when you take action, there are hurdles, and you need to overcome them. In order to overcome such hurdles or obstacles, what has been happening, what you need to do, and after you overcome those obstacles, how do you spread the activities? So Nancy talked about the S curve, the S-type curve, and at one point, there's this sudden tipping point where the activities spread. So you need to go beyond that. The tipping point has to be gone through, and in order to spread the transformation, how do you do that? So the how is what we would like to discuss in this session. First, I would like to ask each organization, the representatives of each organization, what they have been doing so far and what kind of changes have been made with their efforts. First, I would like to ask Ms. Hasega from Keidanren to give us the presentation.
Thank you very much for your kind introduction. I am Hasega from Keidanren. Let me share my presentation slides with you. First of all, about Keidanren. That is a comprehensive economic organization with over 1,400 companies and also regional economic organizations. We are trying to achieve the sustainable development together with them, and we are trying to achieve the society with as we utilize the digital transformation, digital technologies, as well as the imagination and creativity of diverse people to create new values to achieve SDGs. That is a society we are trying to achieve. This slide shows our concept. Society 5.0 we are striving for to achieve SDGs. Currently, our activities are based upon the Society 5.0 for SDGs. The Society 5.0 for SDGs should be led to the practical behaviors of member companies, and we are calling for to be compliant with this Charter of Corporate Behavior. And in 2017, we revised this charter totally to be in line with the Society 5.0 for SDGs. And the companies have a role to lead these activities, and that is clearly stated in this. And in this Charter of Corporate Behavior, how far the member companies are complying with this, we are taking a regular polls. And as a result, the number of companies who answered that they are integrating SDGs into business have increased by 4.2 times from the 2018 to 2020. And also, at the same time, they feel they are challenged with how they are exercising and showing the results of their activities. And last year in June, we made this report, and global organizations like UN and the Japanese government, how they are measuring or assessing the impact are sought out in terms of the methods and initiatives they take. And many stakeholders participating in these activities. How, in order to take organic actions altogether, we thought over what is the best ways to do that. And we picked out these issues out of that research. First, in order to evaluate the impact, first, we need to have a common understanding about the necessity of the impact evaluation, not only the experts, but also for the other parties involved. And then there's a second, as we understand the basic principle of the impact measurement and assessment, we need to develop human resources who are equipped with the practical skills. Currently, they are in shortage. And the third point is, in order to improve the scientific knowledge about the impact measurement and evaluation, we need to accumulate the data and evidence and put on the common platform and to be shared among government, industry, and academia. And for the companies, in order for them to work on SDGs activities, they need to think about like purpose or mission and management strategies. And based upon that, they need to integrate the backcast targets from those. But however, they haven't established the best way to do that. And each one of those companies, in order to have a proper management of the impact, they need to select the right KPIs. And so-called, in order to avoid so-called impact wash, they should be able to make a report with integrity and lead this to the improvement of corporate value and financing. And let me move on to the specific examples of what we are doing. Today, I'd like to focus on the two initiatives. One is about climate change measures, and the second one is about the diversity. In order to realize a sustainable society, the largest issue for the world is that to achieve the carbon neutrality in 2050, to realize the decarbonized society. So Keidanren's carbon neutral code, the action plan is here. We have a vision and 4 pillars. First pillar is to reduce emissions from domestic business operations. We are trying to use best available technologies as much as possible, and each industry set the target, and the third evaluating organization and governmental organization are checking that. And about 43 industries have already achieved the 2020 targets. In order to achieve the 2030 targets, we need to have a further technological transition. And another challenge is challenge 0. In order to realize the decarbonization society, we take this initiative to be pushed forward. And about now 193 companies of member companies have resisted their challenges, like zero emission technologies or finance. Such innovations are already shared to the public. Another initiative is to promote empowering women. Gender diversity in Japan is far behind the other countries. The number of the women managerial position is rising. However, they are still at the low level. In order to affect the decision-making process, Keidanren considers that the board members composition is very important. And if we are focusing on the number of the directors in the board of directors, I mean the women directors. So we set 30% of the target to achieve that 30% of the proportion of the female directors by 2030. We call for this, and about 200 already signed and support this idea. As I said, that the Kay Dunlin trying to achieve the sustainable society with the independent will of the member companies. And we can then all members are all aware that the necessity to show this to our investors. However, there is a trade-off, positive and negative impact with that, and then the total impact, showing the total impact is very difficult challenge. Thank you very much. It was a very comprehensive activities, and we realized that you are doing that in various fields. And SDGs the concept of SDGs is so spread in Japanese society. I think that is partly contributed by the Kennedy Dunlin such activities. Globally, you are leading a very many unique initiatives. And later we can go into more deeper discussions. Now let me call upon that Arima-san, please.
Yes. From the Global Connect Network Japan, I'm the representative director. My name is Arima. Today I would like to talk about the SDGs transformation of the Japanese corporations. It is a big theme. I would like to talk about how fundamental changes are taking place. So that's the perspective I'd like to talk about. First, I would like to talk about my organization. So let me introduce my organization first. And then this year as well, we conducted a survey. And from there, I would like to pick up some of the themes. Moving on. Next slide, please. The Global Compact Network of Japan, the UN Global Compact, exists, and we are the Japanese network organization. The UN Global Compact is what I would like to introduce first. So you see 3 photos here. Mr. Kofi Annan, the former Secretary General, and Ban Ki-moon, and Antonio Guterres. So you see the 3 Secretary Generals that chaired the Global Compact, and they have strongly promoted the activities. It started from Mr. Kofi Annan in 1999 at the Davos convention to the business leaders that were convened. They talked about the connections between the business community and the United Nations. In the 1990s, it was after the Cold War and globalization was happening. And that is when the industries were developing. But in the shadows, there were child labor and also environmental issues. So Mr. Kofi Annan talked to the business leaders and talked about creating a global market that had a human face. And that was the origin of the Global Compact at the United Nations. And in the next year, in 2000, the Global Compact was established. And they talk about human rights, labor, environment, and anti-corruption. And there are 10 principles for the activities. For human rights, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and the International Labour Organization's Declaration of Fundamental Principles and Rights at Work, and the Rio Declaration on Environment and Development, and the United Nations Convention Against Corruption have been the basis of the principles. And currently, there are more than 19,000 organizations. Out of that, 15,000 are corporations, and there are many local networks in the world. And in the local network in Japan, there are 480 corporations and organizations. And just this year, there were additional 70 organizations joining. So from there, you can see that how much people are really paying attention to this. Here, I have created this diagram. So Mr. Kofi Annan's vision, creating a global market with a human face. So that vision is in the middle. In 2000, the UN Global Compact was created, and 2 months later, the MDGs, it's the basis of the SDGs. And Mr. Annan also created the business mechanisms, and on the left you see PRI and ESG. In 2005, discussions started, and in 2006 they were agreed upon on the right-hand side. In 2005, the discussions started. The Human Rights Ruggie Framework for Business and Human Rights. There is this guiding principles. So these four are moving the world significantly. Everything started from Mr. Kofi Annan. Therefore, his vision of creating a global market with a human face, creating that jointly. So these four initiatives are moving along in an integrated manner. So in integrated activities are now being promoted under the Global Compact Network. Please move on. Skipping this slide, moving on. Here, you see some graphs. The recognition of SDGs. As you can see on the left, the top management of organizations, how much they are aware of the SDGs. You see it's around 90%, which is very high. So the understanding and awareness or recognition is very high. It's about 80% at the middle management level. So the SDGs themselves are widely understood. But when it comes to transformations, there's still much room for improvement. Today, there's not enough time. So today, I would like to talk briefly about gender equality and circular economy. When it comes to gender, the specialists are creating questions and they're doing the analysis. Their points have been, when it comes to the success of women, we are seeing much progress. But globally, Japan is the lowest amongst the developed nations. Why is that the case? According to the analysis of the experts, gender equality is the world standard. But the attention towards equality is low. Same for the households. The gender role perceptions or preconceptions are very strong. So fundamental gender equality is an area that people need to pay attention to. And also, when it comes to the circular economy, this is one of the data points that we have done through our survey, that we have collected through the survey. You see at the top, the 3R or 4R that we heard earlier, the circular economy perspective, how organizations are involved. It's about 60–70%. Japanese corporations are very passionate about the 3Rs and 4Rs. In the lower half, you see that the lines are very short. In Europe now, the circular economy type of activities, it's not just about having a circular economy. The amount of materials that are being used are being reduced, and from there, new business models are being created. So that is the perception. It's not just about a mere circular economy. The Japanese organizations involved in such activities are still at a very low level. So this is a major issue from a transformation perspective. Can you go to slide 12, please? These are the points that have been raised by the experts. Let me summarize. At basic levels, changes have to take place. But rather than making basic level changes, in many cases, organizations are focusing on complying with laws and regulations. And also, if you're satisfied with just conforming with policies and laws, that will not lead you to the goals of the SDGs. In general, consideration towards stakeholders in the value chain and supply chain is still weak in Japan. And also, there's a low level of interest and execution by SMEs in many goals. So these are the points that have been raised by the experts. So this is my perspective. Top leadership needs to focus on the essence of each SDG goal. So the awareness or the mindset of top management needs to change. And goal setting and the PDCA cycle at national and government and corporate levels are necessary or essential. And also, there needs to be some kind of public support and guidelines for SMEs since they lack enough resources. And also, the Global Compact Network Japan needs to promote the SDG transformation amongst the corporate society. So these are my thoughts. With this, I would like to end my presentation. Mr. Arima, thank you very much. You raised very important points, especially at the end in the summary. You talked about some of the keys that are important. And also compliance with laws and regulations. You talked about the focus on the laws and regulations. That point was very important. When it comes to SDGs, it's not a legal framework. So if you're just focusing on complying with laws, you are not going to be able to take the right actions. But depending on the field, you also need to have the right laws and regulations in place. So you have to think about what kind of combination is necessary. So that's an area that warrants discussion. Thank you very much. Next, I would like to ask Mr. Kanai to give his presentation.
Thank you very much. I am Kanai from Principles for Financial Actions for the 21st Century. I'm also an acting member and belongs to Sumitomo Mitsui Trust Bank. First of all, let me talk about this. Last year, COP26 was held, and at the private level, there were major activities. I think this is one of that was a financial sector. A so-called G Fund, Glasgow Financial Alliance for Net Zero, was launched. And for banks, Net Zero Banking Alliance by 2050 achieving net zero, that is NZBA for net zero, and also net zero asset manager initiative for asset management. So for each specific industries, those organizations were founded, and that all came to under the umbrella of G funds. And the total asset is about 15,000 trillion yen. So it's kind of that we are observing a seesaw tilting slowly. And in the backdrop of such movement, needless to say, that SDGs that has come to the main street of financial industries. The SDG market in 2021 is almost 4,000 trillion yen. However, for Japan, as you heard from Arima-san, that in 2016 the PRI was established, and then however the Japanese financial companies could not follow properly so far at the beginning. So such a market did not exist at all in the first place. However, after that, just like the levee is breached, the ESG market appeared as a result of the action taken by the cabinet office. To be more specific, Steward Code was developed in 2014 and followed by Ito report, and the GPIF, one of the world's largest pension fund, became signatory to PRI. Those three factors were the main force to push ESG. And at the end of last year, it has become the level of 514 trillion yen in Japan. So here in Japan, the financial sectors are set to be utilized for the ESG initiatives. There are many activities and different government organizations, especially in the Ministry of the Environment, is focusing on the local areas. And for the decarbonization to support the industries, transition finance is focused by the METI, Ministry of Economy, Trade and Industry. And for the money created by the regional revitalization initiatives, that should be circulated locally, that is pushed by Cabinet Office, and financial risk is possible. And also it could be a very major ones, and that part of control or management and as well as the sustainable finance is led by FSA, Financial Services Agency. And aside from that, and climate change operations or climate change activities in general are led by Bank of Japan. And today I am participating as a representative of Principles for Financial Action for the 21st Century. This is formally set as the Principles for Financial Action for the 21st Century toward a Sustainable Society. And 300 organizations are the members, signatory members. And it was formed in 2011, led by Ministry of Environment. And currently, we are holding seminars or events monthly, and results are shared to the public. And we have been quite active in the past 10 years. So, and we are sometimes making a very bold propose, and we are proud that we have been contributing to the sustainable economy establishment in Japan. And we have been focusing on the impact finance for a very long time. Impact finance is simply put by analyzing ESG and making investment or loan and to expect economic return. But in addition to that, positive impact, the social, in other words, social impact will be sought by financial institutions. And what sort of there are some activities it could lead to negative impact that they should be contained. So impact, both negative and positive, we analyze them and evaluate them and set a target for them for management. And a series of those activities are incorporated in the impact finance. And that is an initiative we have never done in the existing financial activities. So we call this some people call this as beyond ESG. In November last year, in order to promote impact finance, the Japan Impact-Driven Financing Initiatives was started, and 21 financial institutions signed at the beginning. And I think that 2021 is the first year of impact finance in Japan. Impact finance is kind of the commitment by the financial institutions for the society proposed by Sdgs. And there is a dialogue between the investors and investees, and that should consider the ESG and to provide finance for the ESG activities. And the impact finance is the activities we should implement as financial institutions. From the perspective of decarbonization, we can say this on the slide. There are many, and we are asking the decarbonization for all the industries. But we've just started toward the goal of 2050 decarbonization. So I think all the companies, industries are at the same position now. And it takes a very long course to achieve 2050 decarbonization, and we need to accumulate the technologies, innovations, and we need to make sure that we make a good start. Otherwise, companies will be left out. And as financial institutions for the long journey, we have to be determined to go together with those companies toward the goal and provide technological innovations to those companies for a long time. That is a transition loan, transition finance, to create a positive impact for decarbonization. Impact finance and transition finance, I think having a common sense. And to do that, the financial institutions need to be savvy enough to do right things. And currently, METI is showing having the roadmap development committee, so that for the high emitter companies, they are trying to provide a roadmap. I think this idea is that, in line with the Gsdr target-based governance for the decarbonization. The financial institutions are required to act, and that is represented by the GFA and Z I talked about at the beginning. Thank you. Kanai-san, you said that the levy was breached in 2013, and that was, I think, the starting point of the S-shaped curve. And going forward, the financial institutions, they are very important industry, how they can make a strong trend and put everyone on the track. I think that would be very critical. And I understand that there are many activities going on in that sector that is quite encouraging. And later, maybe we can discuss what should be done and further down in the future. And lastly, I'd like to ask Ms. Miwa to take over. You said you marked the 5th anniversary. Congratulations.
Thank you. As introduced, I am the co-chair of the Japan Civil Society Network on SDGs. My name is Miwa. And on our 5th anniversary, you gave us a very important speech. From my side, I would like to talk about leveraging transformative actions for achieving SDGs. What are the points for transformation? Our network, the purpose or vision is here to contribute to creating a peaceful, just, and inclusive society where all the generations, including future generations, are free from poverty, inequality, discrimination, various forms of violence, and health concerns are valued and respected in their diversity, coexist with the environment and biosphere, and can enjoy human rights and well-being by leaving no one behind. Currently, there are more than 140 memberships or members from different organizations as well as corporations. Our activities include policy advocacy, partnerships with local communities, and awareness raising. And here you see the dialogue that we had with Mr. Guterres in December of 2017. Last year, from 2021, the core messages of our activities is what I would like to cover, and I'll talk about some of the key points for transformation. Please move on. Last year, in 2021, the Japanese government talked about the Voluntary National Review. The VNR review was announced. In this process, Mr. Kanye has been really active. In that process, the voices of the civil society was to be reflected in the process. In the VNR, the voices of the civil society was reflected, and based on that, we created a spotlight report that is a compilation of the civil society organizations. So I would like to talk about the main points. First, so it is very important to have some policies and a evaluation system should be created. There are global indicators that are not shared globally, so in that case, proxy indicators should be created in the evaluation system. And also, this is related. A very important point is disaggregating the attributes such as sex or gender rather and disabilities from the perspective of leaving no one behind. This is something that is necessary. And also, it is very important to look at the synergy effect between different multiple goals. The multi-benefit and the trade-off is something that should be closely monitored. That was raised already, but from that perspective, evaluations should also take place. And lastly, when it comes to the Japanese SDGs execution or implementation, this is very important. The baseline data needs to be organized, and based on that, the goals and the due dates should be set. And then backcasted monitoring evaluation becomes possible. Please move on. The government, next year in December, they're going to create the action plan for the next year. And from there, we have put together a bottom-up action plan. And there are 4 points from the bottom-up action plan of 2021. So earlier, I talked about the spotlight report, so I would like to focus on point number 4. It's also deeply related to the theme today. The strengthening of partnerships are very important. The government has the SDGs promotion roundtable, so that needs to be strengthened. And the monitoring from a backcasting perspective, that should be also strengthened. And aside from the VNR, the local municipality version, there's the VLR, and with that, the participation of citizens should be strengthened. And also, local initiatives should also be the focus. So these points are very important from the perspective of that we have heard today. And here you see some of the levers for critical transformation. So I talked about the spotlight report and the bottom-up action plans. And here we're using a broader perspective compared to the other two. First, I would like to emphasize sharing of a sense of crisis as a background of adoption of SDGs for COP26. Mr. Kanai already talked about this. Last year at COP26, it was a turning point from various perspectives. And from there, environment is very important, but climate crisis will jeopardize the very base of environment, society, and economy. I don't think the sense of crisis in Japan is shared widely. People are aware of SDGs. On TV, you hear about the local activities related to SDGs, but we need a systematic change. And for that, we need to share the sense of crisis a little more. Point number 2 talks about the leadership of the government that goes beyond the siloed organizations. This is a point that many people are aware of. When it comes to SDGs, I believe that this is a core piece. If you look at the action plan of the government, you really feel this. Unless we go beyond this, we will not be able to go beyond the tipping point. From various perspectives, I believe that is truly the case. Number 3, we really need to take activities by focusing on the place that you belong to at the current time. Without changes, Japan could sink. And from that awareness, you need to have a strong focus. On TV, people have been saying that Japan will really sink without the right activities. And Mr. Kanai earlier talked about that corporations are now also aware of this fact. And also in this discussion, Kanagawa Prefecture is really taking important initiatives. And from here, I think it's very important to take some fair activities. Number 4, it's also related to the 3 points that I mentioned. We have to think about inclusive, just, peaceful, affluent, and resilient future. And we need to ensure gender equality and also respect human rights of all. And we need to make sure that we leave no one behind. And when it comes to the affluence, we need to redefine this. If we continue with the current definition, I don't think we're going to have a future. Arima-san talked about the global market with a human face. Personally, I believe that it's related with that fact. And number 5, it's about creating the citizenship and realizing peace based on the understanding and respect of coexistence and interdependency. When it comes to civil society, if we leave our organizations that we belong to, we are all citizens. Even if you perform well at your organization, if there is a major natural disaster or there's a major blackout at a apartment complex, you would have to go up and down 20 flights of stairs to carry water in some cases. And when it comes to care workers, it would be the same. The situation would be the same if you are an elderly. So that does not mean that everyone would be happy if you don't really pay attention to these aspects. Same for the disabilities. You never know when you will be afflicted with a situation where you would have to live with a disability. And when it comes to coexistence and symbiosis, this is a very important. On the next day after Russia invaded Ukraine, we talked about war and invasion is the biggest threat for economy and the environment. In SDGs in goal 16, it talks about this. Maybe it's too weak. Last year, the Secretary General talked about our common agenda, and it talks about promoting peace and also eliminating conflict. That was number 3. The organization of the United Nations is almost 80 years old. Right before turning 80, the foundation of the United Nations was impacted. And I think the meaning of the SDGs is now being revisited. And if we are able to overcome this crisis and achieve the SDGs, we need to understand what peace is and also understand that it is not possible to achieve peace through war and conflict. That's all from my side. Thank you. Ms. Miwa, thank you very much. You talked about a broad range of themes, and thank you very much for that. And the panelists probably have questions and suggestions and comments to each other. But since you are all here, if you have any questions or comments and suggestions, let's go through them. But before that, Jaime has been listening to the presentations. And as an international expert, I would like to ask for his perspective.
In the last part, Mia-san's presentation, Japan is thinking. I'm located and based in overseas locations. I strongly feel that. I think this is now is the. I strongly feel that we are so left behind from the world. I've never felt that before. This is just my feeling, but I strongly feel that currently Japan is in a crisis, big crisis. And in Japan, however, the SDGs is widely spread as a concept, and everybody is taking different actions. I think that is a hope, and also showing a certain direction we are taking. And from the perspective of experts, who is not a Japanese, from outside of Japan, I'd like to hear the comments from Dr. Miranda.
So Jaime, if you have any comments or questions, including any proposal you may have to each individual panelist, please do so at this moment. So please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Norichika. Thank you to all the distinguished speakers, and thank you for the opportunity to be here as a listener and to learn from you. I think I was listening to Norichika's Professor Kani's feedback and comments on how you feel Japan being isolated. And let me give you the counter view by listening to these enriching sessions. The sensation of being isolated is present, yet you have to also pair that with the sensation of being proud. Coming from Peru, having experienced many social failures in Latin America, and now living in Australia, I can say that the presentation that you gave me and seeing the range of actors, institutions, the public sector, the government sector, civil societies, all united, talking about the SDGs, that's something to be proud of. That level of engagement, that level of commitment, that level of proactiveness doesn't occur in many countries. So first of all, big congratulations to you all. Number two is I value some keywords that I have been presenting across many presentations. And one of them is focus on the essence. And I think the commonality across all these presentations, and particularly what gets us together here, is focus on the essence. And the essence, we've learned in the hard way, the most difficult way, the most painful way. The essence is that we are in this together. And the SDGs are a vehicle towards that, are a vehicle towards sustainable development, towards affluent development, towards peace, towards cooperation. That's the essence. And all of us, each of you, have a role to play in that. We are in this together. The last 2 years of the pandemic have put our societies on all elements, from the very individual level to the communities, to villages, cities, corporations, companies, all of us on our knees to ask ourselves, Is this the way that we want to continue or not? Let's focus on the essence. We are in this together. Which leads to the point of transformations are essential. The SDGs are a guidance. The SDGs do not stop at 2030. Those are the initial steps. But the global society, humanity, needs to embrace transformation. And I do value the call for urgency, the element of crisis. We need to act today. And the element that business as usual is not development. Business as usual may turn, as one of you said, turning us into a shipwreck. That's total failure, that's calamity. But we have the opportunity and we have the means to get towards that. So transformations based on experiences, and obviously one of the low-hanging fruits, one of the indicators to embrace that transformation is this gender inequality indicator, where I did like very much that quote that progress is not enough. There is a target, there is a metric. So just the change in trends will tell you one story, but that is not enough. More needs to be done. And through the element and through this objective number 5 or goal number 5, which is gender, we are able, across many multiple points, we're able to look at the interlinkages, and that's also essential. We cannot afford ourselves to look goal by goal in isolation. It will be inefficient, it will be ineffective, it will lead towards waste, but also tiredness, right? It will be tired. So interlinkages in every single one of our units of operations are necessary. So by doing A, you can achieve A, B, and C. By doing B, you can achieve many others. And that's the common, and that's what gets us united on these Global Sustainable Development Report to address carefully and systematically these lever points and leverage points. I mentioned, and two final quick remarks on this, I mentioned this level of urgency. It is the time. In a way, I'm saying that 2030 is not the end, but it doesn't mean that we can wait and do nothing. No, it is the time to start. It is time to embrace transformation. It is the time to act. And my final point is, let me connect with one of the quotes that was provided by one of the presenters, which connects to my first point. I started saying that we're in this together. And in the same way that a powerful message such as bringing a human face to the global market was powerful enough to set actions and to set an element of solidarity across multiple institutions and organizations, primarily from the private sector, but that shared goal, shared vision, bringing a human face to the global market, we can well use now, 20 years later, 12 years later, to say that working in this, by working on the SDGs, by seeing these different coalitions of all of you talking about the same targets and the same goals, makes me very proud and very optimistic that the goal of we're in this together is achievable, is attainable, but above all, it is important. Let's focus on the essence. And with that, I will stop. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for your invaluable comments. For the interest time, I want to proceed this discussion and ask the panelists to respond to your comments if there is any. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We are running out of time, but if the panelist has any questions or any proposals or comments or any clarifications, do you have anything? No, nothing? Okay, let me move on to the agenda. Okay, we've already heard there's many proposals or the case studies. And this time Gsdr is 7 years after the previous one, after the SDGs started. How we can take this to the transformation, global transformation. The local actions are very important as well. We want to incorporate that to Gsdr as well. So in order to expand what you've suggested, in order to realize that those, as you heard from Jaime-san, that the sense of crisis is very important. And 2030 is the start timing. And what's required, maybe we can just go one round for each one of them. So I'd like to ask a question to you.
So let's take the reverse order. So maybe suddenly you're thinking that you were put on the spot. So may we ask some specific comments? So talking about the local activities, should I give you a case study of a success story and how to expand that? What needs to be done to? You talked about changing the silo organizations. When it comes to the budgeting process of the government, the Ministry of Finance needs to really change fundamentally. I don't think that without that the changes would happen. So in order to change the siloed organization or government, I think politics need to be effective, but you can't wait for that because it's going to take years. So are activities going to start from the local level, or are the stakeholders going to talk about some different project-based activities? And if there are any examples of that, if anything. Yes, thank you. I was thinking about what to introduce to you. So I would like to talk about two examples. Number one, in Nagano Prefecture, they are very active when it comes to climate measures. There is the Climate Crisis Breakthrough Project. They're talking about compact communities and also renewable energy, and also healthy eco-housing and zero carbon buildings. So it is a very good example. They're very active. So if these activities are spread amongst communities, I believe the central government in Japan could also change. Personally, that's the dream I have. When it comes to the implementations at the local communities, there's also connections between municipalities and the central government. There's only so much that the municipalities can do, but the head of the municipalities, the mayors and so on, can do some things in terms of COVID. At Sdgs Award, there is an initiative that has been led by the mayor. And at Nagano Prefecture, I'm really paying attention to this project. And these local activities would probably create power to change the central government. If Nagano changes, maybe other municipalities could also change. If the municipalities are changing, why can't the government change? And I think there, the democracy needs to be implemented, or activities need to take place from a democracy perspective. And hopefully that could lead to systematic changes. And briefly, my second point, at Shizuoka Prefecture, there are local indices that are being created. And I talked to the people who were involved in creating the indices. I was moved by the following fact. The baseline data, I think it could be used as baseline data. For example, already there's the citizen survey, a satisfaction survey that is being done. At Shizuoka City, they're trying. Do you think that the city is attractive so that people can come from all over around the world? And are you welcome? Can you welcome people from around the world to live in the city? So that is the baseline data, and improving the indices is the target, and the SDGs are being acted upon from that perspective. So maybe it would be easier for people to take action towards the SDGs. Because when you say 232 indices, you kind of feel like you are suffering from vertigo. How is that done at a local level? But the baseline data is used. It could be used for gender equality as well. For example, is it easier to rear children in your community, for example? So by doing such surveys, you can actually promote activities at the local level, and you can change the local areas and also the Japanese society. That's all from my side. Thank you. That was a very good case studies. In Nagano, why was that possible in Nagano Prefecture? Maybe we can check that and think about what kind of essence is there. In the Gsdr, maybe we can look into that. So that was a very important insight. Thank you. Mr. Kanai, please. It's not an example. May I talk about something different? Yes, you may. Earlier, you asked about questions, and no one asked a question, and I was wondering why. There are 4 organizations represented here. They have different backgrounds. History is different. And the members that are leading the organizations are also different. If you really think about this, in the financial industry, we're talking about the sustainable activities, and we talked about the guiding principles. Maybe we were only focusing on the points that we are really aware of or we are really familiar with. For example, even in the financial industry, I haven't talked to the Japan Bank Association or Keidanren. So maybe there's this hierarchy between the organizations, and maybe there are no opportunities to meet with each other. So maybe that's why we're not asking questions. We never talk to a civil society organization. Even though these organizations exist, are we really leveraging the organization? That's what I just thought about. And maybe this is an issue or challenge that we need to tackle. And Mr. Yamaguchi of Kanagawa Prefecture was really listening to you. Maybe this forum would be able to create such opportunities. I think many things are possible, and I was just became aware that Keidanen and Kanai-san has never talked to each other. That's not good. And maybe it's this framework that makes that possible. So please, go beyond the position of your organization, even though you represent your organization, but maybe at a personal level, you can have discussions and maybe some things will become clear. And Mr. Kanai did talk about that before the session. So that is something that we would like to do in this forum. Yamaguchi-san, you're not in the screen, but please make note of that. Anima-san, please. I was thinking about what kind of examples I could share. originally I used to work at an organization, and I was in planning and sales. So from that perspective, if you are to really make changes, if the leaders want to make changes, the employees, especially people at the forefront of sales, how could they really agree to that and take bold actions and make commitments? Without that, actually, organizations would not take action. You need to really take action at that level as well. And there are many things that you could do. For example, we talked about the circular economy. I talked about the circular economy. If it's just about a circular economy with materials going round and round, that's very easy to understand. But creating a new business model from there, and also making a viable business, a sustainable business, whether that can happen or not, you need to really use the right level of knowledge. Without that, no one would bet on it. So new examples need to be analyzed and accommodated. I think that type of activities is necessary. And also, recently, the reaction towards changes at the employee level is really improving. That is due to the fact that we have SDGs. The goals of the SDGs are widely spread, and that is why people are more convinced that the activities are necessary.
And also with the circular economy, if you are to take initiatives to start new businesses, the recycling with cascading, that every time the resources are recycled, it is degrading. They are degrading. So within your own value chain, you cannot make best use of those resources. You are forced to work with other industries or other parties. That sort of mechanism is required. So I talked about a lot of things. So, the driver is not a single thing. It would be more combined with other factors and make a mechanism. I think that is one of the tasks of the management. Thank you very much. That was a quite powerful message. With SDGs, the situation is changing. That's what I heard. So with that, together with other parties, we want to clarify what happens if we do not have those. Thank you. Arima-san, your turn. Sorry, Hasegawa-san. I have one point to create a new value from SDGs. As Secretary General Guterres said, that SDGs requires a transformation and also requires investment or finance. From that perspective, that the corporates and the local governments and international organizations are working on them. You cannot tell the impact out of those initiatives. That is the biggest issue. Impact evaluation has an academic forum, so experts are working on that. However, government, investors, corporates, and researchers, for them, we need to have a common understanding and measuring stick. And also, we need to develop human resources who are equipped with good enough skills and knowledge to do that. So Japanese securities trade organizations are now trying to make a platform for the big database for that purpose. So there is a common platform to accumulate such data. Maybe we can develop this with industry and government and academia. And through the innovation, the companies are trying to incorporate SDGs. However, the investors need to understand the value of that and make investment in them. Otherwise, companies cannot go on. So there is a lack of the dialogue between companies and investors, and especially in the impact evaluation area. The investors consider that the innovation initiatives are how much contributing to their corporate businesses and making much impact. That is their interests. But from the perspective of companies, it is very difficult to clearly show them. So what sort of data is required by investment for how long? That part should be engaged, should be discussed, and have a dialogue between them to have a better engagement. Thank you very much. I think that part should be discussed more with Kanai-san. That was a very critical point. And impact common platform is the thing we need to work on going forward. And let's work on this together. Okay, we are running out of time. So lastly, just briefly have a comment from Dr. Jaime.
Jaime, could you give us a final comment in a minute or so?
Very brief comment. Just to reflect and realize that the very same fact that you're not talking between each other in these four different presentations and their constituencies that they represent, that you represent, it's a weakness, but it can also be an opportunity, and that's the spirit of the SDGs transformation. So there you have a lesson, a take-home lesson on transformation. And last point about impact and evaluation, yes, to ensure communication, something that is very well developed on academia. Perhaps it's a need for the business sector. So there's a need, there's mutual understanding to be created and to be fostered. So reflecting on those 2 points. And thank you very much for the case studies of the local community. I really like that question for the baseline survey. A beautiful way to summarize multiple indicators. Can you come and live in this city? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Also, thank you for your participation in the quite late in the evening. Thank you.
Thank you very much, everyone. We will continue. We really want to continue the discussion, but that will be held separately. We will definitely continue this dialogue, and results will be reported out to you all in a separate occasion. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. From Australia, Dr. Jaime, thank you for your participation. Chairman Kanye and all the speakers, thank you very much. Out of your initiatives, I think we could tell there are a lot of keys for solutions, and I think they will contribute a lot to the drafting Gsdr. And lastly, the dialogue, the cross-sectoral dialogue will become possible. That will be quite encouraging. This is the end of the second part of the Gsdr session, present state and future development of SDGs action toward change based on global trend, including Gsdr 2023 interim report. What will be the key for change? After this, starting from 12:30, we are going to have the third part of Gsdr session, presentations on specification for solutions by business from global perspective. Thank you very much for your participation. And on our website, I really appreciate if you can fill out the questionnaire. Thank you.